I just noticed. I guess StreamYard has like updated where now we can just pre-program the intro and outro video. So that's pretty
Mhm.
cool. It looks like maybe capitalism is the way to go, guys. Because I do be paying a hell of a lot of money for this stupid thing. But here we are. Welcome to the show, my lovelies, my muffins, my cinnamon apples. How is everybody doing in our pre-apocalyptic society?
I was freaking out for a moment because the intro was playing twice in my ears, and I was like,
Hmm.
What is happening?" I had opened YouTube so I could look at the chat, and I forgot to mute it. I was just, what is happening? It's just getting overstimulated.
That reminds me of when we did the episode with James and I accidentally nuked the stream because
Yeah.
I had opened it on my phone and it started playing and I just kind of like tweaked out. I'm pretty sure I just hit the eject button on the whole thing. And I'm like, well, there it goes. Uh, what about you, Nico? How's kicks?
Well,
How's the
like I like to
wasteland?
say, the
Uh,
horrors persist, but so do I.
the horrors persist, but I remain goofy.
Exactly.
Same.
I continue to
Keep
be
on
God's
clowning.
silliest goose.
And then we have the one and only my boyfriend, Wumbolicious, Wumbo, certified wumbologist. How you doing, little baby girl?
I'm making it.
You're making it? Yeah.
Surviving.
Yeah. It was definitely a very rapid impromptu decision to have Wumbo on here, but not one that I think we will regret because we are definitely a professional show. We're definitely very organized, like all communist podcasters are. Go ahead.
What communist isn't organized,
You have to watch Collective Rehab to get the full encompassing of that. So basically, what I want to yap about today is how there was not one but two unprecedented hurricanes. One hit already. The other one is I think just made landfall, or is about to.
You're talking about Milton?
Milton, yeah.
That's already gone through.
Okay.
Florida.
Yeah. And I wanted to discuss sort of its contrast with revolutionary optimism, but evidently, as we will see, there's not a whole heck of a lot of written works on revolutionary optimism. So I feel like we'll definitely have to fill in the gaps there. But anywho's, so I wanted to talk about Hurricane Helene that just, for lack of a better term, devastated, I would say, most of the southeast region of the United States, particularly in Georgia and South and North Carolina. The United States has always sort of been woefully unprepared for climate disaster. I mean, capitalism is woefully unprepared to deal with that. But I remember, I'm sure you guys remember, maybe not you, Wumbo, remember Hurricane Katrina and the devastation that Hurricane Katrina brought and the controversy it brought the George Bush administration. And this Hurricane Helene that just went by was considered more powerful than Hurricane Katrina. I think we sort of got lucky in terms of like the extent of damage that it caused, even though it was and we'll get into that, pretty egregious in comparison to what occurred in New Orleans. I think it could have been a lot worse. But basically, I wanted to have you up here, Nico, because you were quite literally in the middle of that. So paint us that picture.
Well, I mean, for me, I was really lucky. I'm actually like kind of dealing with like in a real way like survivor's guilt
Mm-hmm.
because even though the eye of the storm, literally the center of it was only about a mile away from me,
Mm-hmm.
I came out pretty unscathed. Atlanta did have some significant damage, a lot of flooding. You know, we got so much rain. I've never seen that much rain in my life. But
Mm-hmm.
even trying to get prepared for it, kind of showed how woefully unprepared states are for these kind of disasters. A lot of stores are understaffed right now, and so it meant by the time they sold out of water, there was no going to be no like restocking of water. There was no
Yeah.
restocking of canned goods. So I basically was like, I have 3 days worth of food, and that's what I'm gonna have to deal with, you know.
Right. Yeah, I saw images, and in fact I probably should have looked this up before, but I saw images of police guarding a grocery store that
Yep.
had no staff in it, in order to protect the what will be and has already run food um,
Hmm.
from the masses from obtaining it. And I think that's a quite literal demonstration of how uh, the police are here to protect private property. They're here to protect capital. They're here to protect investment by the bourgeois class at the expense of um, people who are going to suffer and people who are going to die. And this is the only that was a very mild response by the police, all things considered. But when people start to get more desperate, which they will, and begin to engage in what we call adventurism in order to not starve to death, we will see police unleash unprecedented violence on the civilian population in order to protect the resources of the bourgeois. Um, yeah, you said that you had never seen that much rain before. I have here. So basically, I have here in my show notes that yeah. So this hurricane that formed on September 24th. It was basically the deadliest Atlantic hurricane since Hurricane Marie, which was in 2017, and the strongest storm to make landfall since Katrina. And I'm not going to show this on this podcast, but I'm sure there's plenty of evidence on YouTube. If you look up the aftermath images, helicopter and aerial pictures and videos of New Orleans during Katrina, um, you'll see just how much devastation it actually brought. So I think, like you were saying, Nico, how you feel lucky. I think generally that's sort of the consensus right now amongst people. But I'm reading here specifically that Atlanta for 3 days had the heaviest rainfall it experienced in 104 years, which is averaging about 11.7 inches or 11.12 inches of rain. Now, for people who might not really know, that may not really sound like a lot, but it only takes 3 inches of running water to sweep a grown adult off their feet.
Yep.
So you compile that with hurricane force winds, tornadoes, thunderstorms that occur with a hurricane. You're going to get devastation of infrastructure and also devastation of the natural environment, leading to things like landslides and mudslides. So I have a couple things here that I want to touch on, and then we can look at some videos. Cruz, what's going on with that cat?
These cats are just surrounding me. They're like, hey, revolutionary optimism. We're here to make sure the optimism stays.
Mm-hmm.
But while you're pulling that up, I did want to add one additional little thing. It's not just like the weak infrastructure that the United States has just all over the country. Like our infrastructure is crumbling due to lack of funding and resources being allocated elsewhere. But it's also infrastructure within Appalachia, Atlanta, and stuff like that are not built for hurricanes. Hurricanes do not go through the mountains. Like the area I live in is very prone to hurricanes. Like I experience a couple of hurricanes like a year usually. Usually not direct hits, but we're kind of used to it. Whereas in Atlanta, North Carolina, South Carolina, or anywhere along the mountain line, the infrastructure is definitely not meant to withstand that much rainfall all at once.
Yeah. Up in New York, I've been saying this for about 2 years now. It's been a while since New York has really gotten hit by a hurricane. I would say, I might be mixing up my storms. I think we got a touch of Marie, but like the last one I think that really like hit New York hard was Irene. And I worry for the day of when a hurricane does hit New York, and New York is woefully unprepared for that situation as well. I mean, the whole country is.
What year
But
was Sandy?
Sandy hit New York pretty hard too. I think that was 2011. I could be wrong, but The point I'm making is here in capitalist society, so what is happening, right? Like why are things changing? What's the sort of dialectics of it? Well, the climate is changing. The planet, the conditions of the planet itself are changing, and this has to do with the rapid and untamed development of capitalism. I've been seeing a lot of memes. I'm sure you guys have on TikTok and like Facebook, Instagram, where people who don't know, really what's going on. And I'm not trying to sound like Matrix pilled or anything, but like people who don't, they're not educated in Marxism. I see
Mhm.
people posting things like "Thanks, big oil, for the climate change," and it's like you're not wrong, but that thought needs to be brought out to its conclusion.
It's
That
only a part of it.
Right. That this is happening because of, again, unchecked and unbridled capitalism. Um, we know now that as early as the 70s, I believe, scientists who were hired by large oil companies, gas companies, conducted studies and surveys and concluded that what they were doing was going to bring about climate disasters within 40 to 50 years. And 40 to 50 years later, this is what we're experiencing. This is something that's
And
been known about.
that data is almost like it's scary at like how accurate they were. And let's also not forget that those scientists were not just like hired by the US government or anything to study it. They were hired by Exxon
Right.
Mobil hired them to figure out, what is the possible stuff. Of course, they're looking at how it's going to affect their bottom line, not how to save the planet.
Right. Exactly. So none of this is really new, to the general knowledge base of humanity. But basically, so and I'm no meteorologist or anything like that, but from what my understanding is that the reason why hurricanes, particularly on this side of the planet, are getting worse is because the water, in the ocean, in the Atlantic Ocean, is physically getting hotter, and as it gets
Yep.
hotter, it is allowing for the hurricane to, this is super layman, I'm not an expert, to acquire more energy, and they're growing faster, they're becoming faster and stronger, and seemingly more common. This is not something that's going to go away until conditions of the planet get worse, or I'm sorry, get better. And this is unfortunately something that we're going to be experiencing more, and will radicalize people more, and we'll get into that. But I have a couple. Well, first, I have a couple of things I want to touch on about some places of where the damage was. But Wumbo, you have any thoughts, any experiences with hurricanes, or you witnessing the climate change in your lifetime?
Yeah, I was actually talking about it earlier. But like, growing up in South Carolina, we would like maybe get like one or two like a season, and like now, um, Florida's gotten already hit by like two and possibly a third one on the way, which is like really crazy to think about. But I mean, like the last big one that came through was like, through my area was Hugo. Um, and like I remember hearing like stories from my grandma and my mom who were staying there at the time. Like it was like like really bad. So I mean, as the hurricane strengthened, like with Helene and Milton, like I can only imagine how much worse it has gotten since then.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I remember in my lifetime, so I'm 27 now. So I remember from 6 years old to about 12 years old, around this time in October, where there already would be snow, like pretty regularly happening in New York. It would snow often. It wasn't so much ice. And I would say probably starting from 12, 13, 14, the winters started happening, quote unquote, later. And when winters do happen now in New York, I would say devastating for sure. Even though New York is up in the north, um, we have very cold winters that are period. There's periods of time where we'll have ice storm, ice storm, ice storm, then nothing will happen, and an ice storm. It's like every time it snows, it's like an event now. It's not just like, oh, it's winter, it snows in the winter. It's like, no, there's a storm coming, and infrastructure is going to be damaged. People are going to lose power. There's going to be car accidents. It's a hazard now. I mean, I guess it always was, to the human animal, but as we've as capitalism sold us the illusion that we were sort of able to tame the cold and tame the winter, that's going in the opposite direction, in sort of the same way that now southern and eastern portions of the states are not as prepared for the hurricane seasons. Anyone have any comments before I move on?
I was just gonna say real quick, like even towns like, one we mentioned Charleston. Charleston was a city that was affected very strongly by Hugo. Because of capitalism, they're just worse off. Like we're going to experience more hurricanes, but Charleston is literally sinking while big business just builds more and more hotels and high story buildings, while people who've lived there for generations are getting priced out and literally having their homes destroyed because their house floods during high tide. Like they're not prepared for hurricanes either anymore.
And I want to bring up a couple little things. Like one, in Florida, they were talking about insurance companies no longer covering for flood damage during hurricanes. I see in the comments they didn't know hurricanes produce tornadoes. There were 126 touchdowns in Florida during Hurricane Milton in terms of tornadoes as well, and some of them are like huge, like wedge-shaped tornadoes. And then the only other little detail I want to add, just to really reiterate like how dangerous these storms are getting and how frequent they're going to be getting. Hurricane Milton, the one that just hit Florida, went from Category 1 to Category 5 in 24 hours, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
And it had approached the mathematical limit of what a storm should be capable of forming in the Gulf of Mexico, and it did it in less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
And that's only going to get worse over the years as the water continues to get hotter.
Yeah. And I already know, like, if you look at the map of the United States and you sort of take that arch from Louisiana and draw a curved line up to like North Carolina, I know within the next, I want to say 100 years, but it's definitely going to be a much shorter time than that. So within 100 years, we're going to see a mass migrations of people moving up north, and we're going to see places like where I live up north in upstate New York, inundated with refugees, not from other countries, but from their own countrymen. And this is going to exacerbate more and more the conditions that people are going through. But a little touch of humor, but not really. You'll see. So the other day, we were playing Battlefield 2042, and in the intro of this game, this is what happens. Real quick, 2024. Category 6 hurricane makes landfall. So like it's not even a joke. Like fiction becomes reality. Because in that video game, the whole premise is that there's thousands of failed states. There's millions of Americans who are they're expatriates now, who are just like basically nomads. I mean, the game doesn't make too many political like statements. It's very anarchistic in its storytelling, but like, dog, that isn't really like that far off. Like, when did that game come out? Like 3 years ago.
Yeah, in 2024 was still like the future.
Yeah,
they've been talking about adding Category 6 for a while, and it's becoming a reality of like we're gonna have to. And I think there have been 5 storms that could technically qualify as Category 6. All of which were in like the Philippines and Taiwan.
All right, so I got here in my notes damage. So they're in Georgia. I might be pronouncing it around Raboon County. They had to open floodgates in order to deal with the rain, which inevitably led to a lot of the main roads becoming impassable. And it led to people literally being surrounded by floodwater in their community, which left residents without power for 2 days, which was a sum total of 1 million people left without power. This is just in one area of Georgia. As of September 29th, 400,000 people were still left without power. And poultry farms in Georgia particularly took large extents of damage. Georgia being the largest producer of, or one of the largest producers of poultry within the United States. And it sounds like some people might think I'm making kind of like a joke that like, oh no, the chicken farm, but like as much as we like are fighting against capitalism, there are so many millions of people in the States. I mean, us, we still go to the grocery store. We're not building communes. That's not a viable option. Rely on a steady supply chain, and things like poultry and chicken are what families use to feed themselves every week. And when you disrupt that, when the animals, the livestock, the literal resources are being destroyed, you are now losing the ability to feed yourself, and you're going to see malnutrition and even famine occur as this gets worse. I have here in North Carolina, 89 people were killed in North Carolina. 200 people were left unaccounted for in the state. Now that number was 600 beforehand. A 4-year-old and a 58-year-old man were killed in a car accident trying to escape the state, and 879,000 people were without power, and 7 tornadoes were reported to touch down and damaged 14 buildings and critically injured 15 people. And then particularly in the Black Mountain region of North Carolina, in a town called Swanoa, there was no rescue efforts made until September 29th. The storm made landfall September 24th. Left people stranded, left villages destroyed by floodwaters, and 200 people died from that. And then in South Carolina, there was 36 people who died and 1.3 million people without power. Now, here's the thing, right? Like, yeah, we're in terms of casualties, right? Like, there have been worse, sure. But the thing I really wanted to look at and talk with you guys about was the amount of people left without power. And I don't think we as a society, at least more liberal society, don't really understand what it means to be without power for an extended period of time. Like, people lose power, and in the northern parts of the country, and it's inconvenient. You can't watch Hulu or whatever, but maybe a day or two later it comes back. But like a week, 2 weeks without power, people are so on edge, are living on the edge of catastrophe in terms of society, in terms of what capitalist governments can provide for people. We saw during the COVID pandemic the piss poor response of the government. So could you imagine if a Category 6 hurricane or even 2 hurricanes decimated a large part of the United States? We're talking about tens of millions of people without electricity, with FEMA being gutted on having no resources, and the Biden administration refusing to give any more money to FEMA while they give another 1.3 million or $1 billion to Israel. What is going to happen to the the regular citizens? What is going to happen to the proletariat? It's Capitalism is producing its own demise, and that's kind of where I want to, we'll get back to that, sort of touch on, the optimism in this. But I don't mean, I want to kind of challenge the idea of optimism as we get farther into this. But I have a couple videos from TikTok. But anyone want to say anything before I move on?
I just wanted to note that in Georgia, the current count is 33 people have died because of Hurricane Helene.
Yeah, it's be so preventable. But all right, let me see what we got here, because we're doing a lot of yapping, but some people, they need to see the visuals, which is fine. Okay.
107 bridge. I can't believe it.
See, I see stuff like that, and it's devastating. But like the first thoughts that come to my head is we're talking about the lack of FEMA money and the lack of money for restoration projects. But not only that, but as these storms continue to strengthen and become more frequent, there's a high likelihood that another storm of that caliber could cross over the same spot while they're still trying to recover. So this problem's only going to exacerbate until we get, like, you know, lack of a better term, a big one, like the big one.
Mhm.
I mean, we're looking at a situation that will develop into an actual wasteland, where a place on Earth that was previously hospitable becoming inhospitable.
A lot of dead air there. Oh God.
That guy is super
car's
lucky.
gone.
I'm okay.
It's
Yeah.
unlucky.
That could have been way worse.
Gone.
It's okay. It's okay.
Are your parents okay?
They're okay.
Was anybody in the gym?
It's okay. It's okay.
Hey, you're okay.
It's the panic. When I hear people panicking like that, it gets to me.
What was that? That was it? Just what flew at him? Was it
was
water?
a mud-
or what?
It was a
It was a mudslide.
landslide.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mudslide.
Mhm. You
There's a
can see
car.
the car is on the roof. Or the roof had come down.
And you know, that's that person's whole life right there. That's just
Mhm.
devastated, and they're left on their own.
Mm-hmm. And the tragic, you know, one of the major tragedies of capitalism is these people are expected to go back to work, and that guy's vehicle goes flying, and the immediate thought is, well, what am I gonna do now? You know, because there's no relief, there's no package coming, there's no stimulus, like, you know, guaranteed resources in capitalism. It's dog eat dog, right? So it's just like, well, and I know you and I, Cruz, were talking about this. Insurance companies said that they were not going to be paying for a lot of this.
Yeah. It's like, that's it.
Which is like the whole point of having insurance, right? And under capitalism, but you know,
and ultimately, what that decision is going to do is, to the point of climate refugees, even without the inhospitable,
you got
like
this.
what's going to happen to that area.
Yeah.
People are just not going to want to live there in general if they know that not only will everything be lost to them in the event of something like this, but they will not get any help. They will not get it back. And I was, someone brought it up in the comments just now, I was going to say the extreme example of the work question was the employer at the plastics factory. I think it was a plastics factory.
Yeah.
Who said employees need to stay, do not evacuate. And the call for them to evacuate, I think they said the water was like up to here by the time they were like, okay, you can go home. And it's like, well, what the hell are you going to do at that point? And then the comment here says, at last I heard it was 6, but the comment says 11, so I don't know exactly how many people died.
Right. And I heard, I don't have a confirmation of this, but I heard a lot of those employees were undocumented people.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, and when you're an undocumented person and you're held under threat of, you know, being turned into ice by your so-called employer, then, you know, what are you supposed to do? You know,
Mhm.
this one, like, not even corny, like made me gasp because of how stark the difference is in this.
Yeah.
Like it's just bonkers, you know,
It's insane.
the devastation that can come about. While I pull some more stuff up, Nico, do you want to talk about a little bit about the gas, the chlorine gas situation that
Mhm.
people were experiencing, that you experienced?
Oh yeah. So pretty much a few days after the hurricane came through, a uh, biolab factory caught on fire and started to basically expose everyone within like at the time like 10 miles to basically chlorine gas and other types of harsh chemicals. Um, I luckily didn't live that close. I'm about 20 miles away from that area. But the next day I woke up and everyone, including my partner, my neighbors, it smelled like we were inside of a pool. And then I realized that I was smelling chlorine in the air. I was breathing in chlorine. Like everyone I knew in the area that went outside, we all started to experience like irritated lungs. I started like sneezing and coughing.
Mhm.
Um, they still have that town, the town that had the biolab explosion or fire. They're still under nighttime, basically shelter in place,
Mhm.
and that's been almost 2 weeks now. So every time they get home by 6 p.m., they still have to shelter in place. All the schools in that area are closed. Um, and wildly enough, a county official was testifying about the harm that the biolab fire has caused, because this is the first time 10 years ago they had another fire. He died from respiratory issues right about an hour after he made his statement.
Holy shit.
That's crazy.
Mhm.
That's bonkers. That's just life's a parody. I mean, I don't know how else to I don't even know what to say. But yeah, you know, that's the thing, you know, when we're talking about these kind of disasters, right? Like, yes, mudslides, yes, there's you know, hurricane force winds, tornadoes and stuff like that, but not only is it like that, you're dealing with crises that are going to evolve. Do I really have to go into the settings and do this? I'm trying to. I was trying to show an article, so I'll just read it real quick. Um, that also shout out Wumbo for finding all this stuff. But it's a post from the come on New York Post about how there is a flesh-eating bacteria warning in the wake of Hurricane Milton. So the Florida Department of Health is urging people to avoid coming into contact with floodwaters brought by Hurricane Milton, warning they could be contaminated with a form of flesh-eating bacteria called Vibrio bacteria, commonly found in warm coastal waters, can cause illness when ingested or when open wounds are exposed to contaminated water. After heavy rainfall and flooding concentration, these bacteria may rise, particularly in brackish and saltwater environments. The department said, health department said residents and visitors should avoid skin contact with floodwaters, particularly those who have any open wounds. So, like, when you're talking about a situation that develops into you know, the loss of power, the destruction of infrastructure, um, you're dealing with disease. You know, that's where things like cholera, like whooping cough, like measles, the flu, dysentery will start to spread as well in these confined areas, especially in areas where diseases can be waterborne or water based. you know, it's only an escalating domino effect going forward. But I have some videos here about Milton, so let's take a look at that.
Storm, just like Helene, is filling up the entire Gulf of Mexico. This storm is bigger. All right, look at the stats right now. And this is the stuff that just came in. Not only is it a category 5, went from a 1 to a 5 in a matter of hours, it just got stronger. Winds are blowing right now at 180 miles per hour, the strongest we've ever recorded in the Atlantic Basin. Hurricane Allen, back in 1980, had 190 mile per hour winds. But I see more warm water ahead. This could actually strengthen. I think it'll weaken right before it comes onshore. It's either a 4, maybe a 3, and that's going to be late Wednesday, early Thursday. But take a look at how all eyes are on Tampa, Florida. And look at the spaghetti model. I know we got a lot to choose from here, but right now it's coming true. It's showing a true track. About 90% are in line with it coming right into Tampa. Zoom in tight there because you need to look at this. If it goes right where my foot is, okay, right there, it would be just north of Tampa. But that would put all the storm surge into Tampa, and Tampa Bay is directly under that number 48. It would be, Nora, I used this analogy before. It's like the water has nowhere to go. It's like taking a gallon of water and pouring it into a Dixie cup. You're going to fill it up, and then it's just going to bubble up and bubble up and bubble up. You betcha. For everybody in that area, if this holds true, it's the worst storm you have ever seen.
Right. And remarkably, you know, even on bourgeois media, you know, you were having, you know, this is not something you can necessarily hide. And yes, Screws, I do have that clip. So let me put that one up.
Incredible hurricane. It has dropped. It has dropped 50 millibars in 10 hours. I apologize. This is just horrific. Maximum sustained winds are 160 miles per hour, and it is just gaining strength in the Gulf of Mexico, where you can imagine the winds. I mean, the seas are just so incredibly hot, record hot, as you might imagine. You know what's driving that. I don't need to tell you. Global warming, climate change are leading to this and becoming an increasing threat for Yucatan, including Merida and Progreso and other areas there.
Yeah, that clip went viral on TikTok and YouTube because of the meteorologist's candidacy and his willingness to be vulnerable on camera. Because yeah, this is these are situations that are real. These are situations going away. I know it's kind of like a bombardment of information and clips, but there's really no other way to get the point across without showing. This is clip of people trying to leave Florida before Hurricane Milton arrives, and you can see it goes on for miles and miles and miles. And high key reminds me of like the clips in zombie movies where like everybody's on the highway, you know, because like yeah, it's apocalyptic level events that are occurring.
And then, you know, in zombie movies, like the cars inevitably get abandoned and people leave. It's like eventually that's going to start happening too. We're going to see cars abandoned as people are just desperate to get away from these storms.
Right.
Me llevo el refri, la tele,
todo se echó para allá.
todo lo meto a perder.
And then I have some clip here of a tornado. You want to read that comment real quick, Cruz, while I pull this up?
Which one? The one that just... Oh, I was thinking about how we adhere to authority even in emergencies, like not driving the wrong side of the road to escape. I mean, that's true. Like we have some societal norms sort of ingrained into us, and even in life or death situations, people still find themselves following them.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's hard to break that, you know, programming that we all got.
damage. This is incredible to see that clear view of the tornado. You can even see the debris at the bottom of the cyclone. And as we take a look, those clouds looking very dark and ominous. And you can see the cars driving by. I mean, all depending on when it moved and crossed across Alligator Alley, hopefully there was no one in its path. At least we don't know of yet any accidents, but we could see more of these tornadoes forming. And we're seeing the tornado warnings are in effect still for many parts of Broward County right now.
There's one more I'm looking for, which I just found, and then I'll kind of we can get into more of the bigger point that I'm trying to get at here.
I have a friend who's from Sarasota, Florida, which is like just below Tampa. That got direct hit of Milton.
Howdy, Summer. Welcome to the podcast.
She was looking at she lives up here in Virginia near me, but she was looking at videos of the tornadoes hitting that area, and she's like, there are no precautions. Tornadoes don't happen in Florida, and one of the biggest precautions or things to do in a tornado is you seek the lowest level of your house. How do you do that in Florida during a hurricane? Like,
right.
I was just like, exactly.
Yeah. All right, I got one more, and then I kind of want to get to sort of the bigger point that I'm trying to get at.
My house washed away. I had a cat. I had 2 geckos. And I lost it all.
We lost everything: family, friends, homes, our jobs, everything, our animals. We have nothing. We got family members floating down the river.
Jackie and Alex say they're struggling to find help, and the resources are strained.
FEMA's here. You know what FEMA just told us? We can't get you a phone. I have no ID. I have no way to pay for food. He has no way to get gas. We're stuck. So we have to sleep in a car that's leaking with the same clothes we've had on since the...
For now, these strangers have each other until they can find more help and reach family.
She hopped in and she said, "Thank God for country people."
This little boy was nice enough to pick me up.
Reporting in Asheville, North Carolina, for AccuWeather, I'm Bill Wadell.
Asheville in particular was essentially wiped off the map. I think I have a picture on here, but I'll talk about sort of that clip in general. So that clip sticks out to me for a lot of reasons. One, I am a sensitive being, and just seeing that guy's his eyes and that just stare of devastation fucks me up, like, and humans are so interesting in the things that they find so near and dear to them. Like, obviously the devastation of losing his home, but what's the next thing he says? I lost my cat. I lost my animals.
2 cats and a gecko.
That fucks me up. That's seriously draws out the empathy in me. And these 2 strangers have stuck together through this situation. And I want to bring up a point here where this woman says, "Thank God for country people." And I just know that liberals will see this clip and make fun of these people
100%.
and mock them. And sure, it is part of collective's, humor and brand to make fun of white people. And we make fun of white people in the sense of whiteness being a category of superiority. But at the end of the day, like all race relations, while race relations are real, the concept of race is not. And when you take that and combine it with class, when it comes to poor white people in this case, liberals have this disconnection where they will see something like this and their response will be, well, they voted for it, or well, the people they support, they don't put in the infrastructure, they don't pay it, they don't pay for these things, they don't put money into FEMA, they deserve it. And I just don't understand how you can see something like that and with your whole chest not feel an ounce of empathy. And it doesn't matter that maybe these people wouldn't like me. Maybe they wouldn't like our politics. Maybe they wouldn't like the color of my skin. But in this circumstance, to bring the whole point together, it doesn't really matter. Yes, it matters. Duh. But what I'm saying is when it comes to the devastation that is being brought on by humankind, the conditions that these people are being put into as a direct line and responsibility that's coming from the capitalist forces, and being unable to recognize that and simply mock and gawk at these people who are suffering. Literally just said they have, I presumably meant dead family members floating away, like, and you're just like, yeah, like you're a psychopath, like you're a sick individual, and I don't understand how people can see that and just think it's okay to make fun of.
I think the one that I've been seeing the most personally and has been honestly pissing me off the most are the people who have been like, oh, well, they were told to evacuate. They didn't. And it's like, how? Where are they going to go? Like, none of them expected it. Evacuate or not. Like, you don't expect that kind of devastation. And, you don't know how long it's going to be before you can go back to your house. Where are they supposed to go? The infrastructure is not there for mass evacuation, as we saw with Florida. Like, I think those people were in Asheville, right? Like, it's not there.
I mean, even just financially, like financially, like for me, getting ready for this hurricane, I had to ask to borrow money from my partner's family because I could not afford the groceries that I would need to be able to survive for, a week without electricity that happened. You expect other people to just be able to get up and go somewhere.
Right.
They can't even afford the groceries.
I was going to say, like, one of the things in that last clip in particular that also stands out to me is the fact that she said she went to FEMA. They said, can't get you a phone or anything. And then she says, I can't pay for food. Like, why is it that she has to worry about paying for food in that situation?
Exactly.
Why are we so focused on profit because someone's trying to make a profit still?
Yeah, for sure. They yeah, exactly. Speaking of profit, I don't have the picture, but I saw airline tickets from leaving Florida. So a flight from New York to Florida on a budget airline is for one person $150. Maybe $200. I saw for a one person going for a 2-day stay or 2-day layover from Florida to New York, $1,800 for one person.
Yeah. Disgusting.
I mean,
absolutely.
like I work in a profession, a trained profession, and I get paid pretty well. That's about how much I make from one of my jobs every 2 weeks. It's labor, it's intensive labor. So if I am struggling to just have $1,800 on hand, how the fuck are these people who probably don't even have the money to put in gas to evacuate are supposed to have $1,800 for one person? For one person. Like,
Yeah,
be
let alone your
so
family.
for real. Right. Exactly. And I think that's the thing that liberals don't understand. They're not putting it together. Like when they're saying, okay, evacuate and go where? A hotel, a parking lot, a Walmart parking lot, the side of the road. Like liberals don't have the understanding that outside of your domicile, your shelter, that you're paying rent or a mortgage for, the world is a dangerous place. Like being, that you're homeless at that point, right? Like, and we know it's illegal to be homeless, right? Like, so what are these people going to do? So it's take my chances basically and hope that the roof doesn't collapse. And for hundreds of people, they tried to take their chances and it didn't work out in their favor, and now they're gone. So I wanted to pair this episode with talking about revolutionary optimism. And I spent most of today trying to find articles or something in Marxist archives about it. And I really came up with shit. I really couldn't find anything. And it really got me thinking about, like, sort of, what does it mean to be optimistic? Because right now I'm seeing, and a lot of this episode is very doom and gloom, very, devastating, sad imagery. But I've been thinking a lot also about the concept of revolution. And I was actually thinking about doing some writing about it, where, like, we're talking about fundamental change, right? And I was thinking, like, of the phrase, like, it's going to be okay. And I feel like, and maybe it's just rambling and it's not going to make any sense, but, like, I'm starting to form a resistance against, I guess, the traditional idea of optimism and the idea of it's going to be okay. Not in the sense that, like, I don't believe that there is a better future, but I think for me, it is really starting to sink in that the way everything in human society is structured right now is going to change. It is not going to stay this way. And I think that is sort of where I'm starting to choose to plant my flag when it comes to the idea of optimism, is that it will be different. It's going to have to be different because the contradictions are getting worse and worse. The revolution will happen. And I don't mean that, like, well, if we just wait long enough, socialist revolution is going to happen. What I mean by revolution is in the complete fundamental change of human society. And that is going to clash with different kinds of revolutions, of different people trying to form different kinds of great societal change. I mean, we saw, I would say, almost a proto version of it with the rise of fascism in Nazi Germany, where the people decided to, or were manipulated, some would say, to follow Hitler in order to bring about a fascist revolution, in order to have their great societal upheaval and change. I think that is it's going to be a very small version of what is going to happen all over the planet and all over human society, where not only are we going to see socialist revolutions attempted, we're going to see fascist revolutions doubling down on bourgeois society, but inevitably we are going to see, for lack of a better term, factions of humans fighting for their version and hope of what human society can be. And whatever comes out of that is going to be a great societal and upheaval and change of not only governments, but culture and human conditioning. And I think it's hard for us to sort of accept this and register this because, one, human lives are really short. So, we've only, between all of us here, 30 something years of life, where has had some changes. But when it comes to the scale of human society, like from 1900 to 2024 has relatively been sort of the same society. There's been changes, of course, but sort of the very basic concepts of what humans are living and working for, or laboring for, capitalists in this case, has always been the same for the majority of the planet. But I'm starting to seriously see now that that is not going to be the case any longer. And I think people and Marxists need to start accepting and preparing for that. I have no idea if any of that made sense, gang. So you tell me.
Something I've thought for a while is, there's that phrase, like, socialism's inevitable. I'm sure y'all have heard it before. I've heard it several times, where people are saying socialism is inevitable. And in relation to optimism, I'm always optimistic that change is coming. The masses ultimately decide. No weapons No amount of climate change or anything is going to ultimately decide what our fate is. The people are going to decide what our fate is and how we exist in the world as it changes around us. Some natural, some from our own doing. But my challenge would be that socialism is not inevitable. We actively have to change it. That is the point of Marxism. As Marx said, the great philosophers of the past have simply analyzed the world. It is our responsibility to change it.
Absolutely.
Well,
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%, Chris. I do believe socialism is inevitable in the sense that, I'm choosing to believe that, but it has to be brought on by the masses, by the people, by us, how we choose to live our lives, what we are advocating for, and willing to ultimately make, sacrifices in our life in order to further the cause. So I think as particularly climate disaster gets worse and people are being pushed further and further to the brink, I do believe that will be the sort of spark in the prairie field. However, our job is to prepare the masses and prepare our communities for that inevitability and to have them to be in our flock, so to say, before it is too late. Because a lot of those people are going to be fascists because that is simply going to be the only thing they have to hold on to in order to survive. And we will also see a much of liberal society side with fascists in order to preserve this era that they live in now. But we're getting close to an hour here. Nico and Wumbo, you have anything to say? Any closing remarks?
I mean, I absolutely agree with everything you both said about revolutionary optimism. And one of the things I think is really important is I try to think that when people are faced with these contradictions, if I show them, like, they're aware of the bad things, as a revolutionary, I have to tell them what the good things could be if they just put their efforts towards that as masses. So that's a lot of times what I think about revolutionary optimism is. Like, I have to remind myself and other people that there can be something better. The change will happen. We just have to work for it.
Exactly. I agree 100%. Any last words, Juan Bellini? All right. I think that was Juan Bellini's last words.
I'll say, and I mean this with complete pun intended, Marxists can see the storm coming, and it's our job to ensure that the masses are prepared for it, despite the fact that the liberals are just going to laugh at them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said,
my lights turned off at that moment, and that was weird.
That's dramatic as hell.
Right?
All right, gang. So that being said, gang, go do something fun. Smile a little bit. This was a gloomy one.
It is Friday night. Enjoy yourselves in
Yeah.
whatever way you can.
Yeah. But remember, just remember what we're fighting for. Later.